Hey everybody, Aaron Huey here. I'm here with Professor Dr. John Terry, becoming a real good friend of mine. And thank you, all you Safe Dojo peeps, and those of you from outside the Safe Dojo support group. Thank you for joining us for this time. Thank you for taking the time to focus on your school, to focus on your students, to focus on your business, most importantly, focusing on yourself. Um, John Terry and I have had a lot of conversations around how do you grow a school. And when he and I first started talking, one of the things that I brought to the table was a niche market that, quite frankly, isn't so niche anymore. It's a massively growing market, and it feels weird to call these children, these students, that you have access to a market, but it's exactly what they are. And as John and I began to discuss, talking to these students, talking to their parents, talking to the people who see these students on a regular basis, John really talked a lot about and has made it very clear that as martial artists, we are martial artists first and businessmen second, if business people at all. Some of us start running businesses without any business training, but really love the martial arts. John, talk about that a little bit, because that one really landed for me.
Aaron, I appreciate you being on, and I'm really excited about this project that we're talking about and the opportunity to reach into a group of young lives that have been shattered, that have been torn, that have really just been ripped apart, and have an opportunity to pour life back into them. And through the medium of the martial arts, give them an opportunity to see hope, to see some salvation, to see an opportunity to truly overcome the challenges and the ordeals and the struggles they've been through, and have an opportunity to really experience real life in a measure they maybe never dreamed. But I know one of the things that you and I talked about early on when we first met was, I've been in the martial arts industry for years. I've run successful schools. I've been privileged since 2008 to be working with the International Martial Arts Council of America and as president since 2016. But one of the things I hear from school owners all the time is the fact that they struggle on the business side of running a martial arts organization. They love the martial arts. They're black belt masters at their art, profession, trade, craft, whatever you want to call it. But when it comes to running the business side, knowing how to set things up, how to even do simple things like, how do you check a student in? How do you make sure they're paying their tuition every month so they don't get behind? What's the follow-up program? So if they miss, there's a sequence. Even those little things are foreign to many of them because they don't realize they are running a business. They see themselves as a school owner running a school rather than seeing themselves as a business owner who teaches martial arts. And there's a huge distinction between the two. And what I found over many, many years now is that a lot of these guys, although they're very gifted at the teaching of the martial arts, and they do a fantastic job with that, they're white belts when it literally comes to the basics of running a business. And they wonder why their school's not growing. They're not putting the systems in place so that they have the opportunity for growth within their school. That's a big issue. The second area that I see is the school owners, fantastic again at the martial arts, but when it comes to growing themselves and becoming a better version of themselves, so they're not just gifted at teaching these kids to kick, to do self-defense, to go compete in tournaments, they're teaching these kids the other subtle aspects of the martial arts, character, values, leadership, all those important elements that are an essential part of the history of the martial arts. Those are ignored and overlooked, and those are differentiators they miss.
Yeah. As a martial arts instructor, I would never make claim to being any like huge talent or even a massive traditionalist or some modern contemporary, I've figured out a new secret system style type fighter. I very much, like many martial arts instructors, taught conglomerate styles. As I picked things up, as I learned things from my teachers, I would share them with the students. And that's how they learned, is that we all learned together. But where I found myself and my business more successful than other people, superior martial artists to me, easily I can say that. These are better martial artists than me. And if a student wants skill, they would be better going to this other teacher than they would to me. However, they came to me because of how I met them at the door, about how I connected with them, about how I intervened when things started to go sideways, not just in class, but when a parent called me and said, I'm sorry, my student's not going to be there. We can't stop him to play video games. There was a moment in that I had a different relationship with my students than I see a lot of other martial artists have. Not only that, but my school very much began with a unique circumstance. And it very simply is this. A mother called me and said, my son has tried to kill himself 3 times and I caught him. Can you teach him? Now, being someone who came to the martial arts way back when I was 12 years old, because of my depression, because of being bullied, because of being abandoned by a parent, because of all these things that so many of us started martial arts for, and found a home with these teachers, these mentors, these coaches, these trainers who were sharing with me power and sharing with me force and sharing with me energy. I knew in that moment that even though I didn't understand what to do for this kid psychologically, I could be there for him and with him. And you can imagine that the moment I began to interact with that child, what that mom told other moms, what she told her child's therapist, and who else that therapist told. That's how I built the school. And so the entire Safe Dojo project is not only just here's how you go work with a struggling, starving aspect in your community. And every community's got them. And it's gotten worse due to COVID. And it's a growing population, not a shrinking one, but how to find them, how to connect with them, and how to meet them at the front door, how to bill their parents, how to market to them in such a way that those parents respond. I built a massive school. I built an extremely financially successful school, and I didn't charge a lot. In fact, I charged a lot less than some of the more talented martial artists. But those students stayed with me. And John, as you saw, even when I came to the Martial Arts Hall of Fame, that first student was with me there too.
Yes.
That suicidal 6 years old is now 26 years old and is still with me. That's how I built my school. And along the way, learning those business skills that, quite frankly, John, you want to teach them right at the beginning, which had I known, I can't imagine the type of success I would have had at the beginning had I known what you know about business.
You know, I think back to the early days when I started my school. I had a young man that approached me in his early 20s, and he wanted to be a school owner. He said, I can teach the martial arts. I don't know anything about running a business. I said, let's come together and let's build a school. He said, I don't have any money. I said, that's okay, I do. I says, if we're going to build this, we're going to build it together. And the idea was this. I wanted him to be very passionate about learning to be an incredible teacher, which he still is to this day. But he needed to learn some things about business that he didn't understand. He was a meat cutter at Kroger's. That was the extent of his experience. He was fantastic with a knife, and he could make these amazing fillets. He knew exactly where to cut to give you the type of beef you wanted or chicken or whatever it was. But when it came to actually managing a checkbook, to actually, being able to set up a system to check kids in, to understand what it meant to market to a particular niche. If you want to go attract 4 and 5-year-olds for your Little Dragons program, how do you do that? You want to go attract females for a women's self-defense program, how do you do that? And walking through those things with him gave me a realization. And as I began to talk to other school owners, they didn't know this either. And that became a passion for me. And that's a big part of what we do with our association, is teaching those important business skills. But I think back to what you were saying about this young boy that's been with you, and I met him. What an amazing guy he is. And I think back to in the early formative years of our school, we began to work with some assessment tools as part of learning in business, but also wanting to be known as more than just another martial arts school in town, another karate school. We wanted to be unique and different. So we not only taught the martial arts, we taught leadership, we taught character, we taught people what the importance was of getting good grades and the value of an education and what that could do for you. And we created incentive systems in our program to incentivize those things. We learned how to interact and speak with the kids based upon their own unique style of communication. The parents started coming to us and saying, how is it you can talk to my kids and get them to do things that I can't? Well, guess what became of that? An opportunity to begin to coach and train parents. The next thing you know, we've got a parenting program that we're doing to teach parents how to raise their kids. Because I don't know about you, I've got 6 kids. And when I went to high school, there was never a class on parenting 101. I went to college. I spent years in college and a lot of money to get these amazing degrees, not a single class on how to be a great parent, how to be a great husband or wife or whatever it is. We don't learn those things. But if we can bring those in and make those a part of what we're doing, and we can go to these kids that are marginalized, these kids that don't have a father figure in their lives, don't have a mother in their lives, for whatever reason, they're being raised by grandparents or an aunt or an uncle or someone else, and they've been through these struggles and still going through struggles. We have an opportunity to meet them where they are and to bring them into a place that they feel comfortable, they feel welcomed, they feel valued, and they feel loved. And I don't necessarily mean the huggy kissy thing, but they feel like you are committed. And this is how I define love, a commitment to another person's welfare and well-being. And those kids knew when they came in our school, and we work with the court system. And we had to deal with the court system that when a kid was 2 strike or 3 strike, they had an option. They could be sent to do time in our school and to learn those important things that we taught, or they could go get locked up. Well, guess what? They chose to come to the school. And every time we got them in the school, they never went back to the court system again, because they discovered, many for the very first time, they were a unique person of value, that they had something to contribute, and they had gifts and skills and talents inside of them that no one had ever said, you are amazing at this. Nobody ever spoke into their lives and helped them build the confidence and esteem to go see and seize their value and their worth and live that out in the marketplace, so that they truly became the person they were put on this earth to become. That's powerful.
Yeah. You and I, just in this conversation and what you said, have already started to reveal one of the business mistakes that martial arts instructors and school owners make. And that is, well, I want to make a school for everybody. No product is designed for everybody. Pants are not designed for everybody. Different kinds of pants are designed for different kinds of people, which is why we begin to segment our schools into classes. Now, what I submit is that when you talk about going to the courts, and I talk about these therapists who began to mention my name to other therapists, to other parents, to school counselors, that's an unexplored market for any school instructor who's listening. And I get it. You're working a full-time job and you're trying to launch a martial arts school, and you're burnt, the candle's burnt at both ends. An hour to call a probation officers, to get the list and call them and say, I'm wondering if you and I can talk about people on your probation list and getting them in the martial arts class. Because instructors, as well as I do, as well as the president of the Martial Arts Hall of Fame, who's sitting here on the phone with us, knows that martial arts saves lives.
That's right.
We know that a kid who's bullied, abandoned, abused, or assaulted can go to martial arts and have a life they know they deserve, one of their own creation. But rather than wait for that child to walk through the door, you go get them. And instead of just hanging the shingle and the poster and the flyer, you go march your butt into the therapist's office and say, may I put some flyers in your class? But on top of that, in the same way that you need the skill to do good marketing, because marketing is not a throw seeds into the desert and pray for rain. It is a targeted, intentional, conscious choice you have to make constantly. And so is working with traumatized children, abandoned children, children who are suffering from depression. The brain chemistry and the science we understand now that we didn't understand 20 years ago is mind-boggling. And what we do in the Safe Dojo Project is not just give you the business skills to figure out how to connect to these parents, teachers, and clinicians, because trust me, a parent, teacher, and clinician who works and deals with traumatized children has a different ear than a parent who just wants their kid off of video games and doing martial arts so that they get in shape, or something to do between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock, or if the parent themselves wants to study martial arts again because they used to do it when they were a kid. You have to know how to talk to a parent, a teacher, or a clinician, someone who's connected to a traumatized child, so that you don't say the wrong thing, because the wrong thing means they send them somewhere else, because markets are specific. The second thing to understand, which is so important, which was what I discovered in running a school and then working with expert team of psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, because I ran a residential treatment center for traumatized children, and I taught them marks. I have taught girls who have been trafficked how to get out from underneath a 200-pound dude in a fist suit without that girl slipping into unconsciousness and going into trauma response. But that's because I know what trauma response is. I know how to instruct the guy in the fist suit, and I know what part of martial arts are actually therapeutic and what is not. And if you don't know the differences between good targeted marketing and throwing seeds in the desert, and if you don't know the difference between someone who can't get out of depression versus someone who won't get out of depression, saying the wrong thing means you lose the student. And we all know that an unhappy parent will tell 14 people. A happy parent will tell 2 or 3. That's unfair, but it's also accurate.
Yeah. You know, when I think about what you're saying, Aaron, and I just finished re-recording a series I teach called Master the Art of Sales and Selling. And one of the things I was talking about in that particular series that I just finished re-recording is the fact that far too many school owners, when they say, what do? They say, well, I'm a karate instructor, or I'm a kung fu instructor, or I'm a taekwondo instructor. Well, everybody has a bias, either towards martial arts or against. And we know statistically, only 2% of the United States populace is ever going to walk in the doors of a martial arts school and take martial arts. So you can do the math in your community and figure out what your student populace could look like if you got every single one of them in your school and you were the only one in town. So it's a small number. The way we expand that number is when we think about our schools differently. And one of the things I ask in this course, and as I'm teaching this, and I teach this to sales organizations all over the country, is your parents, your students, anybody that you're trying to entice to come into your school, they're asking one question that either they're asking it out loud or it's in their head. Why should I choose your school over any and every other school over band or choir or soccer or football or watching video games all day or simply doing nothing that I'm doing now? How does my life change for the better as a result of plugging into what it is that you do? And what you're talking about is speaking the language of these troubled individuals and letting those clinicians know, there's parents know, there's hope, there's help, and there's opportunity to rescue a life that is worth saving. And that is the power of what Safe Dojo brings.
In the same sense that Safe Dojo can connect to these children and connect to these parents, these teachers, these clinicians, the business skills that they get from you, which we included in the Safe Dojo Project, but also they can get through your Black Belt Leadership Academy, and you're understanding how to be a black belt in your business, to use your term, is that a well-placed kick, a well-placed punch does not have to be the hardest thing you throw. It has to be well-placed. And understanding well-placed business strategies, understanding that strike point of a business, understanding that when that child comes in and in front of that parent, you hit your knee, you humble yourself as their mentor, as their master, sensei, Sifu, guru, professor, and you say, really excited to work with you. And as we get started, I want to make sure that when I high five you or when I yell, yeah, great job, that I don't actually hurt your feelings, that you understand that when I'm excited, I get really big energy. And I know sometimes big energy can shut you down. And I never, ever want to shut you down because I really care about you. Now, why would I say that? Well, if the last person this child was around who had big energy, used to beat the hell out of them, right, you've got to check your energy. This child is in your school learning the art of war, and they may have come from a place where that was extremely misused and abused, and they have suffered. So why should they trust you? How should they trust you? Your perfectly placed kick and punch, when you're showing a child who suffered abuse, that needs to be done in such a certain special, spectacular way that the child knows, oh, here I'm safe. And that's why we called it the Safe Dojo Project.
That is correct. Yeah.
And then to turn around and to use these business skills to say to the parents, teachers, and clinicians, my dojo is safe. I don't know about those other guys. They're good. These are great martial artists. So-and-so's a friend of mine. But I specialize in working with traumatized children. Who do you think the therapist, the teacher, the clinician, the parent want their kid to go to? I can tell you the result of them coming to me at a massively successful school. And I was not the best martial artist around. I'm just the one who cared enough to understand what was going on in this child.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I think about 3 truths that I teach when I do sales and marketing training. And those 3 truths are very simple. If you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. Truth number 2, if you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else gets. And if we look at the state of the martial arts here in the United States, just as an example, the average size of the school is under 22 students. And it's a part-time instructor, barely able to make rent every month because they don't understand there's a business side that can grow their school without sacrificing the quality. But to do that, you've got to have a niche. And that leads us to the 3rd truth. And the 3rd truth is this: if you do what nobody else is doing, you're going to stand out, you're going to get noticed, and you're going to get ahead. But that only happens when you begin to see yourself as more than just a martial arts instructor. You've got to see yourself, as you're talking about, and as I'm talking about, and as we're very passionate about, we're somebody that can rescue a life. We're somebody that for years I traveled and taught women self-defense courses all over the country and around the world, teaching women how to defend themselves from those that wanted to see them as prey, to see them as an opportunity to gain an advantage over someone. And I think about the women's lives, and as I would be sharing and we would be teaching at these events, many of them would come up and later share stories about how that they were sexually assaulted, they were raped, they were physically abused by a boyfriend or a husband. And as I heard those stories, and then seeing as they went through this program, you could recognize them as we would begin to teach elements, and you would see them freeze up. You'd see the nonverbals that you knew something was there. But it was when they began to trust you and they felt like this was a safe place and that they were here to learn how to stop being a victim and to become a victor over their circumstances, they begin to open up. And it's like that flower that you're looking at that all of a sudden begins to open up and begins to bloom. And now you see something in that person because they see in themselves an opportunity to put the past behind them and to move forward to what's ahead of them and to become the person they were meant to be. That is huge. And that's why I'm such a big supporter of this Safe Dojo project, because I've seen it change lives.
Little blip right there.
That's
I
all right.
got what you, yeah, I got what you were saying. And what you were saying actually reminded me of a story of one of the teachers in the Safe Dojo curriculum, where she was talking about, and she is an extremely skilled impact instructor, and empower martial artist, working a lot with women and children. Like I said, she's one of the guest instructors in the Safe Dojo course. She was auditing a jiu-jitsu class, and this was in the greater state of Chicago, inside the city. State of Chicago. There you go. That's why I'm a martial arts instructor and not a teacher. But she was in the city of Chicago. She was auditing a jiu-jitsu class, and the guy was walking around, and she was sitting next to another woman. And the guy said, "And we're going to use our voice." And he started screaming at the class. And the woman next to, her name is Michelle, the woman next to Michelle froze. And Michelle could feel it, could sense it, looked at the woman and said, "Are you okay?" And obviously the woman wasn't. But that moment of connection, that moment of, "I'm with you, I got you, we don't have to change what you're going through, just let you know I'm with you, you can hang on." They clasped hands, and guess who ended up with the student? It wasn't the jiu-jitsu instructor who was screaming, right? But it was the person who saw the need in the moment and the greater need that's going on in the community and met that need. And that's good business. You find a problem and solve it. There will always be people who want to study martial arts.
That's right.
There are always children who need to study martial arts. This course is, how do you meet that need? And I love what you're saying. And it sounds, what's the word? It sounds arrogant to say we're in the business of saving lives, but Isn't that why we got into martial arts in the first place? In case something, God forbid, ever happens, I can handle it. Well, what I can say is, folks, it's happening. This is what we were trained for.
That's right.
There are children in the need, and their lives and is going downhill. And as they become teenagers, it gets worse. And when they become adults, they're walking wounded. And they're having kids. And the walking wounded are having walking wounded for children. This is our job. And this is an opportunity for you to go do the good work, teaching what you love for people who really, really need you. But they're not going to walk in your door. You got to go get them.
You're absolutely right. You know, we worked with special needs kids, and that was one of the niches that we found early on.
Absolutely.
We started working with kids with Asperger's. And I remember those kids coming into the school, and, you know, many of them developmentally delayed in terms of their ability to interact. And many of them were just kind of this quiet, withdrawn individual. But I remember as we began to work with them and we began to value them and we began to speak encouraging words into their lives and let them see that they could do this even with their processing issues of how they processed information. And yeah, they were a little stiff at times and they were slow to learn at times. But when they got it, they got it. And then we take these kids to tournaments and we get them in their first tournament. And after they get the nervousness out of it, they walk out and they perform like this amazing machine that just wowed the judges. And they come home with their very first medal or their very first trophy. And all of a sudden, you see this jump in their openness and you see this expansion of who they are. And I think of one young man that made it all the way to brown belt before he blew his knee out in our school and didn't get to finish his black belt. But when he came in, one of these very quiet, reserved, shy kids, the young man now is on the stage, wouldn't speak, wouldn't look anybody in the eye. He's now on the stage doing drama. He's doing music. He's singing. He's doing all these incredible acting and music things that just came out of him because he discovered who he was in and through the martial arts and found out that despite of the way his brain processes differently, he could become more and he could do more. And as a result of being more and doing more, he's making a difference in the lives of others. And most people today wouldn't know that this was a kid that was on the spectrum, that when you meet him today, you would say, he's just as normal as any other kid. And, you know, that's the phrase I hear. And I don't like that phrase because everybody is normal in their own way. But to see him from those early days when he was just this withdrawn, quiet kid to today, it's this transformation of, you know, the worm to the butterfly, or, you know, whatever analogy you want to make. It was just this amazing transformation. I guess that's the word I love out of that is you and I and what we do and what others that embrace this model do. We are transformational change agents. And we're transforming the lives of people that don't believe they have a future, or they believe they're going to be a victim the rest of their lives, or they're going to be limited in some way the rest of their lives, to see the limitless potential that rests inside of them.
I think that's the story to end on. And by God, I love martial arts stories. Every single one of us. Why I created the martial arts talk podcast, like it did the mat that I was able to do out there. And thank you again so much for the opportunity to run the podcast out at the last Martial Arts Hall of Fame conference this past July. It was incredible because every single one of these massively powerful men and women touched into that deep place in their heart and told their truths. And it was also incredible to see some of these world famous Hall of Famers start to cry when they talked about their teachers and the people who pulled them out of the shadows and the darkness and gave them an opportunity to in turn do that for others. That's our job. That's what we signed up for. That's what had happened to us. And so for everybody listening, please understand, and for everybody watching here, please understand what John Terry and I are trying to do is not change which martial arts style you're doing or trying to teach you how to kick or punch better. There is a way of running a school that will make you unstoppable, and you can quit your full-time job or your part-time job and become that full-time martial arts. There is a way to use your dojo all day long, and not just when the kids are out of school. There is a way to get those parents involved in the evenings, on the weekends, maybe not kicking and punching, but learning and being coached by you for their children, to not just be another martial arts instructor. In Boulder, Colorado, you can't throw a rock and not hit a martial arts school. But I became the one that people sought out and paid to help them help their children. And it became a unique market for me, to the point that I built a massive company with 33 staff. And I have worked with thousands and thousands of students. John Terry helps martial arts instructors all over the world take their school to the next level. That's what the Safe Dojo Project is to take what you have and bring it massively onto the scene. Your skill and what we know about the business of martial arts and the niche market of traumatized children and how to help them get the lives we all know they deserve. So stay here on Safe Dojo. Keep checking us out. Make sure you sign up for John. Talk about the Black Belt Leadership.
Absolutely. One of the free gifts that I give to the martial arts community and even to corporate America is an opportunity each week to get a leadership newsletter from me, something you can use that's written that you can use in your school. Everybody does a mat chat, or most schools do, in between their workout and their training time. What an opportunity to take some leadership lessons and apply those in your life. So you have an opportunity to grow yourself, but at the same time begin to introduce these little things that Aaron and I have been talking about that lets you set your school apart, makes you different and unique. And somebody says, why pick your school over any other martial arts school in town? You can come in and say, here's why. Not only will your kids learn to punch, kick, and all the other things martial arts are known for, here are the other things your children are going to learn. Here's what you're going to learn, and here's how it's going to benefit you and make you better. That in itself is valuable, because that is the attractional thing that gets people walking in the door of your school that are going to ignore the other schools in town.
So how do they get signed up for your program?
Very easy to go. If they want to get access to the newsletter, the other things that we offer, they can go to beablackbeltleader.com. If they want to know more about what we do, our next big training camp's coming up July 20 through 22, 2023. We're going to be in Houston, Texas. They can find more about that at UnitedStatesMartialArtsHallOfFame.com. We have Facebook pages. They can also find us at Be a Black Belt Leader on Facebook and United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame on Facebook.
And for me, the gift that I have for you are these two things. Number one, the Matt podcast. I've had an incredible time. My first 21 episodes are done and in the can. Every single one of the first 21 guests are Hall of Famers. We had a great time. They're nice little snippets to just keep that love of the martial arts going. The second is this Safe Dojo page. I want you to be here on Facebook watching this. And if you're not watching us here on Facebook, make sure you go to Safe Dojo on Facebook. It's a private group where we are just supporting each other as instructors, giving business advice, and ultimately instructors will be showing up giving their advice as well. And through this Safe Dojo page, John and I will be introducing you to the Safe Dojo certification course. It's unbelievably affordable with a very small monthly charge, but we'll talk about that later. For right now, get on the Black Belt Leadership, get on the Safe Dojo page, listen to the Mat. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts. Just get the support and make sure, just like martial artists, we are lifting each other off the mat and keeping each other going, because that's the old martial arts saying, right? Fall down 7, get up 8. It's no different in your business. No different with your challenging students. So John, thanks. I know we're going to do a lot more of these. I appreciate you to the ends of the earth. And those of you who were here with us during this time and who are watching afterwards, thank you for taking the time for your school and your students. We'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you.